Good evening from the News Radio, 1120 AM and 93.7 FM, KPNW studios. I'm Bill Lundun asking the question, why does it glisten? Tonight's news brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental, where if you call him today, he'll see you today, and they can set up Saturday appointments because not everybody, has time off that they can take during the week. He'll help you out. And he does great emergency work, too. Dr. Michael Bratland rocks. I know. I'm one of his customers. All right. Here is a look at some of the stories we're following. And we're going to start off with, of course, the homeless situation in Oregon. And really, it's a problem all along the West Coast. But Oregon, of course, is behind the eight ball because part of what makes Oregon Oregon is enabling, people that probably shouldn't be enabled. So first off, we're going to start off with about 140 transients that were living in two sanctioned homeless camps in Cottage Grove, literally in the downtown business area and neighborhoods. Well, they are going to be evicted. And as a matter of fact, that's happening today. Those who were permanently living in these camps were given 2 weeks' notice 2 weeks ago. And most of those packing up their belongings were folks that just decided that's where they're going to be for the rest of their lives. Cottage Grove says the camps are being closed for extensive cleaning due to rat infestations, drug paraphernalia, heaps of trash, and, human waste. No word yet on how much that's going to tax or cost taxpayers for the cleanup. And if willing, those who are in these so-called permanent sites living in downtown and neighborhood camps, they can move into what used to be Lulu's Dog Park, where the city is going to set up a dusk to dawn camp open from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., meaning they won't be allowed to set up their tents before 7 p.m. and at 7 a.m. they have to be gone. Now, the homeless claim the city needs to offer sufficient and sanitary alternative campsites or resources. And remember, just a moment ago, we were talking about the camps they were living in that were dealing with rat infestations and trash and human waste. Okay. Others also claim the dog park is unsanitary. The camp at 12th Street, which is located behind literally Dairy Mart, one of the most popular little stores in town, will eventually be transitioned to a dusk to dawn site, according to the city. Then we have another town to the south, Corvallis. That's the home of Oregon State University. They've got their own problems with homelessness, and the homeless advocates in Corvallis are speaking out because, the city is sweeping a lot of these permanent camps that they just allowed to spring up in particularly what we're going to call some of the larger natural wildland kind of parks. And so one of those is Pioneer Park. And the city says that these camps that have sprouted up there, and it's a sprawling property along the Willamette River, has grown to sizes that they become health and safety concerns. And they see huge amounts of people that just set up, these makeshift homeless shanty towns, essentially. Well, the Oregon Department of Transportation and the city of Corvallis are partnering to sweep these particular campsites. Now, the homeless campers, like the ones in Cottage Grove, were given advance notice that they needed to collect their stuff and get out. The remaining debris from some of these camps was so voluminous, they just didn't have people go in and pick it up. They actually removed it by bulldozers. All right, so just wrap your head around that. The Parks Division of Corvallis says most of the parks had a lot of hazardous material left on the ground, like, human waste, needles from drugs, burnt fentanyl foil, and a lot of other garbage. In addition, there were increased chances of fires. And we've seen this happen around Oregon in these areas that, while it may be a park, is more of a wildland area, and a number of fires had already been started in these areas. So they said, we need to do something about it. The homeless advocates, though, this is their claim, and I'll quote them. Every person living at the homeless camps has important medical and physical needs that are being overlooked with a sweep. Okay. Well, Oregon's population has been shrinking. For almost a decade, Oregon had the highest in-state migration of just about any state in the United States. But a couple of years ago, actually right around 2020, that began to change, particularly in the Portland area, the most populous city in the state of Oregon. And the people that are leaving are the people with the highest incomes. Why would that be? So since the pandemic, the city's population has been in decline, with the average people moving away being the highest earners by far. Mike Wilkerson is actually somebody who crunched the numbers for the Portland research firm Eco Northwest. They do a lot of studies dealing with economies and the like of the entire state. The average income of households moving out of Multnomah County, which is the county that includes the most of Portland, was at minimum $105,000 a year, according to the newly released tax data from 2022. That is up by more than a third from 2020. Among those moving into the county, though, which those moving in are less than those moving out, the average household income with two earners was about $70,000. Now, Wilkerson says that taxes are a big part of this. That's because the county's Preschool for All program levies a 3% tax on high earners. Then you have Metro's Housing Services program that taxes high earners an additional 1% to, well, spend on the homeless. And on top of that, Oregon's top personal income tax rate is just shy of 10%. So as a result, if you're a high earner in Multnomah County, you actually pay close to the nation's top marginal tax rate. And while the taxes may be driving some people away just because of the insane dollar amount, Wilkerson says that's not the whole story. He said people, even those not paying the big ticket taxes, are actually considering what they're getting for their money. Like, for instance, people are looking at long response times for police, or they just don't show up. Also, the same for ambulances. Potholes are all over and pockmark the city of Portland. And you have the quality of public schools, which are among the worst in the nation. And then you have the homeless crisis, where the homeless are living on sidewalks, spilling into the streets around the city of Portland, although they're trying to clean that up, but there have been problems there as well. So they're out of there. Well, Democratic Oregon Governor Tina Kotek is following in the footsteps of her predecessor, Kate Brown. How? Well, the 2024 Morning Consult poll of all 50 state governors shows that Kotek is at the very bottom of the poll, meaning she is the most disliked and least approved governor in the United States of America. Now, her polls are at 45%, and these polls are basically, these governors are rated by each state's citizens. What's interesting is the results show a sizable undecided population, which, well, if they went with the rest of the trends, actually saved her from even having a higher disapproval or lower approval rating. The ACLU of Oregon has filed suit against the Medford Police Department in Southern Oregon, claiming it's illegally compiling files on people who protested against the Minneapolis police murder of George Floyd and who advocate for homeless people and drug users. This has to do, of course, with ballot measure 110. Now, the claim is that the police department monitored social media and news stories and that they built files of people who, at least at that point, weren't suspected of any criminal activity. So if you have groups that are known to commit crimes, violate the law and the like, even if their members, some of them aren't violating the law, don't you want to know who all the members of the troublemaking groups are? Just asking. Neither the city attorney for Medford or the police chief have commented on the lawsuit. Well, here's something kind of fun. The Bend director of St. Vincent de Paul allegedly had a side hustle. What would that side hustle be? Now, in case you don't know, at least in this area, St. Vincent de Paul is a nonprofit, and for a lot of areas, they are one of the main nonprofit groups that counties in particular reach out to deal with the homeless crisis. So anyway, the Bend director of St. Vincent de Paul had this little side hustle allegedly going on. Notice I said allegedly. That's going to lead you to note something must be amiss. And in this case, it's allegedly selling meth out of his house. 58-year-old Gary Lee Hewitt was arrested for selling commercial quantities of meth from his home in Redmond, which is located within 1,000 feet of two different schools, which increases, well, the level of severity of the charges, here in Oregon at least. Officers searched Hewitt's homes, and what did they find? Oh, meth, scales, packing material, and lots of money. So grocers, insurers, timber companies, large businesses, even small businesses from inside and outside Oregon, so far have dropped a whopping $5.8 million to fight a ballot measure that would increase corporate activities taxes so that every Oregonian, whether they're here legally or not, whether they actually live in a home or they're homeless, it would give them $1,600 a year. The Political Action Committee, called Defeat the Costly Tax on Sales, was formed by the Oregon Business and Industry Group to oppose Measure 118. And they had a huge wave of contributions, including a $1 million donation from a group funded by Kroger's, Albertsons Safeway, Winco, Costco, and other grocery chains. Measure 118 actually establishes a 3% tax on business sales in Oregon. Now, that's on total sales. It's before taxes, and it's before any profits or anything come out. And it would distribute the money among anyone who supposedly says, I live here. Critics say that it'll hurt Oregon's economy and discourage companies from doing business in the state, as well as lay people off, and it would cause huge increases in the cost of just about anything here in Oregon. But the proponents say it would relieve the financial burden on low-income Oregonians, the same one they're going to be paying more at grocery stores to pay for this. Now, in case you didn't know, all right, we're talking about, for instance, grocery stores. The profit margin typically for grocery stores and convenience stores ranges anywhere between 1.5% to about 2.8%. And that includes big grocers like Kroger's, Albertsons Safeway, Costco, even small, convenience stores that are set up. That's the entirety of their profit margin that would go into this tax. So how are they going to survive unless, well, they jack it up? Now, again, this is a pyramiding tax. So when these, let's say, Campbell's Soup eventually gets to the grocery store, every way along the supply chain, it's being taxed, whatever it is, 3%. So by the time it gets to the store, they're looking at price increases on what they're buying on the wholesale market, somewhere in the range of anywhere from about 9 to 12, and in some cases, depending on the good, 15%. And then they have to pay another 3% on top of that. So where does all of this get paid for? By the end user. And who's the end user? Us, the people that buy stuff. Great idea, Oregon. And as we told you last week, Oregon was considered the 9th worst place because of things like this in the United States to live. Come on, Oregon. Pass ballot measure 118. We can make it into the top 5. Maybe we can make it to number 1. All right, your news brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental. And Rick, go ahead and be real. Just get real. Be real. Really, really real, Rick.